Let's move on to formatting parts. Formatting parts is pretty similar to formatting scores, but there are a few other tricks that can speed things up. Let's whiz through this first violin part quickly. By default, you can see that multi-bar rests are set to consolidate. That's in Layout Options, Players, and it's this option here. At letter A, or just after letter A, it might be helpful to throw a cue in, and I'm afraid this is a pro-only function. You can do this from the score or the part, but if multi-bar rests are on, it can be easier in the score. The cues functionality is this ear icon, and actually you can have Dorico suggest cues based on how long the player's been resting. If I turn this way down to 5 seconds and update, it'll pick these up. But to put in a cue, I need to select the rests, and then click Create Cue, or it's Shift U, then start typing the name of the source instrument, and then just drop down the list with the arrow keys and hit Enter. Now again, visibility of cues is layout specific, so I've just got this orange signpost. If you want to see them, it's Layout Options. I'm just going to start typing to search, then click Cues, and it's this tick box. Anyway, back to the part. Ooh, I can turn off this highlight now. And here's my Violin 2 cue. This is dynamically linked to the real music in the Violin 2 stuff, so you can't edit the cue here, but you shouldn't need to. If you change some notes in the Violin 2, in the part or the score, they're going to update here automatically. And the cue itself has handles, so you can drag it longer or shorter or move it or whatever, and the usual right mode shortcuts Alt left and right to move, and Shift Alt left and right to extend. If you don't want to see this slur, for instance, you could set this property. But as always, properties should be a reminder that if there's a rule down here to break, there's a rule you can change, and that's in engraving options. So get in there and go wild. I might just put another quick cue in here. Now here's a trick. If I select the cue I already have and copy it, then double click to get the caret at C, then I can actually use Command right or Control right to move through the rest a measure at a time without having to split the multi-rest. Then Command V or Control V to paste. And because this is dynamically linked, it's now the Violin 2 part for bar 37 or whatever this is. And then I can shorten it with Shift Alt left. Then I think I'm just going to throw in some system breaks. One at B, back in engrave mode. One at B, Shift S, then one at 37. Oh, I wanted that to be a page turn. So if I type Shift F, that'll turn my system break into a frame break. Just let me reinforce that if you want to force these systems back to the previous page and you're happy with the layout options, you need to use the Make into Frame button or one frame break that waits for another frame break. A lot of people try going into the staff spacing tool, then dragging this staff up, then dragging all these staves up. That's not how Dorico works, so use a pair of frame breaks. Now, I've just spotted that these two system text items are messing up the spacing. I actually want this one over to the left, with this button. But if it was over to the right, it would collide with the metronome mark, which is why the tempo mark has moved up. Pro tip for text items is to turn off Avoid Collisions. So that's a switch to override the engraving option, and then the fact it's not ticked means it's turned off. I'll still want to move this by hand in engrave mode. I'll nudge it up with Command Alt up, but at least I'm only moving one object, not two. A couple of quick tips. In setup mode, if you right-click any layout, there's Propagate Part Formatting, and this allows you to copy the formatting from any one part to any other part or group of parts. This first tick box copies the layout options over, and the second tick box copies the system formatting. What that means is that, for instance, in this first violin part, I've got the pickup bar and bars 1 to 4 on the first system, and then I've got bars 5 to 8 on the second system, and then I've got another 8 bars on the third system. So in the Violin 2 part, it's going to put a frame break here, a system break here, and a system break here, and they're all going to wait for each other. And for that reason, I recommend only ticking this option if you know that the material in this part and this part is pretty similar. Because if you apply it and the material doesn't match, you're going to find that this just isn't that helpful. Violin 1 had a multi-bar rest here, so in the Violin 2, this is too tight. It can be a useful starting point, but bear in mind that all of these breaks are set to wait for each other. So if you delete this break, you're going to need to also turn off the wait for next property on this break. And remember that if you want to set layout options for lots of parts in one go, you can just go into layout options, grab all of them in the right panel, or use the select all button at the bottom. Then make the change, then apply, and it'll go into all of your parts. So that's formatting parts.